The Celtics are taking a huge risk. Joe Mazzulla revealed some details about the big man rotation, and it has some Celtics fans a little bit concerned. We'll be talking about that. Plus, Jayson Tatum has been speaking out as a leader, and we'll be talking about why that could be huge for the Boston Celtics. Plus, Payton Pritchard is apparently out for blood this year. All of that on this episode of Celtics Digest. But Bruce, before we get into the video, a reminder that 90% of the people watching this video are not subscribed. So if you're not subscribed, click the button down below. We'll have daily Boston Celtics content all season long. Let's dive into this, and we got to talk a bit about Payton Pritchard, our boy PP. And he is putting in some work this offseason. Sam Hauser was recently interviewed, and he had this to say about the young Celtics guard. He said, Payton Pritchard has had a great camp. Hauser believes Pritchard is, quote, out for blood this season. And you got to understand, like, Payton Pritchard's now being thrust into this role of backup point guard. Clearly, the Celtics have a lot of faith in him, but he knows this is his time to step up, and he sure seems to be taking advantage.
I totally agree. I'm very excited for Payton Pritchard this season. Obviously, we've seen him pan out really well in these Pro-Am games and these off seasons, and Payton Pritchard has looked like one of these explosive young point guards that the Boston Celtics could use on offense. We've seen him be a great three-point shooter for the Celtics, but have some problems actually like getting open and spacing himself on the three-point line. And I think that with Payton Pritchard actually working hard and playing alongside Sam Hauser, it's actually going to help himself get open more, having two players that can shoot from the perimeter on the bench, and I think that's going to be great for the Boston Celtics. Payton Pritchard obviously working with contract extensions as well with the Celtics, so I think that the Celtics are looking to keep Payton Pritchard long term, keep him ready to with the lock with the Boston Celtics, and I think he's going to be a potential piece that the Celtics could have for 4 to 5 years in the future.
Yeah, I mean, he's shown flashes of being a great player. Of course, his minutes have kind of been up and down throughout his career, but he's been steady, and the Boston Celtics believe a lot in him. And Bruce, we also saw a tweet today saying that the Boston Celtics will be a little light on their starters' minutes come the preseason, which means guys like Jayson Tatum, guy like Jrue Holiday are not going to get as many minutes as we might think. So this is just another chance for Payton Pritchard to show out, right? I mean, like you said, they're in the midst of contract extension talks, and he's now going to get starting minutes probably throughout this preseason. You got to think that he's going to use every single chance he gets to prove his worth to the Celtics, and honestly, I'm here for it.
Same here. I totally agree. And he just got engaged this offseason as well. So you know that he's going to be looking for a big time paycheck to help him out as well with that. So Payton Pritchard's just going to be grinding in that gym, helping that this contract here, hopefully this season, can hopefully pay him for a couple of years in the NBA and solidify his role in the NBA. As you said, he's been bouncing with the Celtics, playing some minutes in the finals run, but then last year, not really seeing a lot of minutes with their deep guard rotation. So by the Celtics trading their other guards, they're definitely experiencing and wanting Payton Pritchard to take that role and be better with it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's move on a bit to Jayson Tatum, a guy we just mentioned a little bit. And boy, this is, I think, this tweet kind of went under the radar. I mean, I didn't see a whole lot of people talking about this, but we got to say, like, this is pretty big for the Celtics in general. Let's talk about it. Derrick White said that Jayson Tatum is one of the players who has stepped up his vocal leadership. Quote, he's not being like Grant or nothing, thank God. I mean, that's kind of funny. We've seen clips of Grant Williams talking in Mavs practices as well. But Bruce, we also saw this. Al Horford kind of said that Jayson Tatum was really speaking out at around this time last year. He said a very similar thing. And to hear that he stepped it up again, like, you know, when you see younger guys who are on the team, I mean, Tatum, I guess, he's still young, but he's maybe not one of the youngest guys on the team. But when these superstars, right, this guy's easily top 10, probably top 5 player in the league. When these superstars take that jump from being just a guy trying to make their way in the league, prove themselves and really good, to taking that vocal leadership role. I mean, we saw it with guys like LeBron, like Kevin Durant in a lot of cases. Like, this can really signify a turn not only for the player, but for the team that they're on into this, like, incredible contender championship window.
I totally agree. Obviously, we've seen a guy like Jayson Tatum excel in past years, making the NBA Finals and being almost making the NBA Finals last season. But Jayson Tatum now being one of the guys that's been one of the longest tenured Celtics on this roster, he's got to take that leadership role, kind of be that locker room presence. And I love to hear that from Derrick White. He's already assuming and taking that role before the season even started. And I think he in the offseason kind of working out with Paul Pierce, kind of buying into that mentality of being a true Celtic, I think is going to help him as well be a good leader. I think guys like Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, those guys are going to also help him be a good leader too, like being at practices, teaching him what to do, telling him what to say. I think seeing those other Celtics around is going to want to inspire him as well to be a more vocal, more leader, telling them that this is my team. I want to be in control of this team at these practices. I want to make sure that we're doing the drills right, and making sure that these players are held accountable. And we've seen in the past that they've had some issues with being held accountable in the locker room and having some turmoil. But I think that with leaders like Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum, I think that this team is bought in and ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, if you're taking vocal leadership lessons from Kevin Garnett, I mean, look, I don't know if there's many better people in the history of the league than that guy right there. And it's awesome, like you said, to have these veterans around. And I know they've been speaking out. I mean, Eddie House came out and said, like, look, we had the veterans around for us, Bill Russell, Casey Jones, these kind of guys, Hondo. And now to hear that Pierce Garnett and Celtics legend Eddie House are, I mean, well, he scored like 30 odd in a playoff game, I think, once. So hey, shout out to Eddie House. But yeah, like, it's really cool that these guys are around. And again, like, this vocal leadership is just awesome because, like you said, there have been locker room issues in the past, but it really seems like every single day these Celtics are coming more together as a team, even though there's a lot of new faces and a lot of their favorite guys have now since departed. To be able to keep having that leadership, that mentality of like, we're in this together, is awesome. And I think it'll pay dividends this season. But look, there's one thing we got to talk about here, and it's another tweet about this season as well. And there's still some question marks around the Celtics. Vocal leadership might not be one, but what is their big man rotation. So this is kind of a double-edged sword here in the card. Big rotation update, but it's also a rotation update about their bigs. Let's just get right into it. Joe Mazzulla on his backup center. It starts with Luke. I thought Luke really did a great job last year. I think he's an underrated player, and I don't think people realize how effective he is. He's a guy that's always in the right spot defensively and makes the right play. Now, look, Luke Kornet is not some superstar center over his career. He's averaged 5 and 3 roughly on okay shooting. But in his time with the Boston Celtics last year, and a little bit a couple of years ago when he came over halfway through the season from Chicago, Luke Kornet has looked pretty good, and his defensive metrics are actually better with Boston than with any other team in his career, including his first few years in New York where he was playing more minutes. Especially last year, his defensive win shares, if you like advanced stats, 1.2 in his 69 games with the Celtics. And he's 7'2", Bruce. He's an okay shot blocker for his size, maybe a little below average, but the Celtics seem to want to rely on him to be their backup center. And coming from a rotation of Robert Williams, Al Horford, and Blake Griffin, I feel like that's some big shoes to fill for Luke Kornet, and a lot of Celtics fans are saying this might be a little risky to have him be your number one guy back there.
I totally agree with you on this topic, Josh. I think having Kornet, obviously he's played with the Celtics before, been with the rotation. Obviously, you want to kind of instill that he's going to want to be the backup center. But like you said, him being 7'2", Kirstaps Porzingis also being 7 foot, the Celtics are having type of the same kind of rim protector, just staying in the paint. Obviously, we talked about yesterday how they want to make Kristaps play outside the perimeter more. But Kornet, you're not going to want to do that as much as lateral quickness isn't that great. So Kornet kind of having the same similar role as Kristaps Porzingis on the defensive side. I don't know if you want to run that as your backup big. I think you might want to add some versatility to the backup rotation. I know that they've signed guys like neemias queta. I know they signed a guy like Wenyen Gabriel. I think Wenyen Gabriel can add more of like an athletic big than a guy like Luke Kornet is. I feel like Luke Kornet's just going to stand there and just block shots, do the Kornet core test a couple times. But besides that, I think adding a different type of player, maybe more of a lob threat, as the Celtics lost that in Robert Williams, I think might add some versatility to this team at the backup center. Don't get me wrong. I think Luke Kornet could kind of help out the Boston Celtics at backup center for a decent amount of time. And maybe when we get closer to the season, closer to the trade deadline, the Celtics will explore adding another big to this rotation. But if they do run with Kornet, I do think it is risky, but it could pay off.
Yeah, and look, it is risky because this guy, I mean, he's had some chances before. He played like 17 minutes a game for the Knicks earlier in his career. Like, he's had stints where he's played sort of backup minutes. But the thing is, I think there's a reason the Celtics brought in these guys like Queta, like Gabriel, like you mentioned, and I think that's because it might be a bit of a platoon. And while Mazzulla's saying it starts with Kornet, it most definitely will. I'd say he'll be the number one guy coming in for Kristaps, other than like maybe Al Horford, who's probably going to play a bit more of a power forward role. There's still other guys, right? And when it comes to the regular season, you just want to make sure Al is not going to get as tired. And last season, it was a lot of Blake Griffin coming in and just kind of eating up those minutes for Al Horford when you wanted to rest him. Blake goes in, sacrifices his body, and sits out a few games. But now you kind of have a few younger guys, a guy who's 7'2" in Kornet, and then a couple younger guys like Queta and Wenyen Gabriel who can come in and bang down low, hopefully, and just eat those minutes. And when it comes playoff time, you almost just want those three guys to be able to put in a solid 15 minutes a night combined kind of thing, right? Or whoever's rolling on that given day. So while I think it's tough to say like, oh yeah, look at this Boston Celtics, this favorite to come out of the East, Luke Kornet is their backup center. That's kind of scary. But at the same time, in an ideal world, when it comes to the playoffs and when it comes to a lot of games in the regular season, I think it's just going to be kind of that platoon of those three guys being able to eat up enough minutes. Do you kind of agree with that, or do you think it's still like, you think Kornet might end up getting more minutes than we think?
I think it's going to be a platoon, like you said. I totally think that's what's going to happen. As like you said, Kornet hasn't had the best ability playing backup center. We've seen him play with the Chicago Bulls and with the New York Knicks a little bit, and I just remember just not being a big fan of him, kind of questioning why the Celtics brought him in the first place. Then obviously we've seen him grow a little bit with the Celtics, actually be a viable third center, but I don't know if he could really be a solidified second center for the Boston Celtics. But ultimately we'll see. A guy like Gabriel or a guy like Queta could actually prove and be better than Kornet, and Kornet could actually during the season fall in his role a little bit, or Kornet could just shock us completely wrong, be that guy and help out the Boston Celtics in a way that Joe Mazzulla actually feels confident in him, like Sam Hauser, like Payton Pritchard, and he could be our backup center. But I think that the Celtics will look towards more the trade deadline when they're going to look at a backup center, because like you said, in the playoff rotation, it's going to dwindle once we get closer. You know what I mean? They start off with 10 guys and they go down to 9, then they'll usually go down to 8, maybe 7 guys once they hit that playoff rotation. So that backup center position doesn't need to be a really, really good backup center. It just has to be someone that can just take the blows down low, play a couple minutes per game, and just next game, put in another guy.
Yep, exactly. I mean, if you can eat the minutes in that playoff rotation, that's what you want to be. You don't want to be a negative with a certain guy on the floor. And I mean, we'll just have to wait and see this season. I'm excited to see what Luke Kornet can do, because I do have faith in him. I just think, like, we haven't maybe seen it yet, but I think if the Celtics have faith in him, I have faith in him. I know it's the same for you. And look, all we can do is wait and see. Have faith in the Celtics organization, because this team is going to be fun. But that'll do it for this news episode of Celtics Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We're getting really close to 1,000 subs. We appreciate all the support on every video. And if you're still around at this point in the video and you haven't hit subscribe, why not? You clearly liked the video, and we have a lot more where this one comes from. I'm Josh Gosse for my co-host Bruce Veliz. Catch you in the next one.